All right, so good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you're joining us from, everyone. My name is Jesse, and I am with Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants. If you're joining us for the first time, we're all about bringing conservation, adventure, and science into classrooms around the world. And I just want to say a huge thank you again to all our teachers for joining live on camera and all those on YouTube today as we continue to showcase amazing scientists and explorers and places around the globe. Now, all of November, we spent the month talking about conservation, talking about amazing species, and we've sort of carried that on over into December, highlighting creatures as far away as Indonesia, the Arctic, East Africa, Brazilian rainforest, and more. It's been a real pleasure getting to showcase all these incredible species. But today, we're going to be joined by the second time ever at a really, really special place. So we are joined all the way live in Alaska by Allyssa Morris. So she is going to showcase today a little bit about lynx in the Yukon Flats National Wildlife Refuge. Lynx are one of the rarest, most elusive, incredible cats in North America. And so we're going to learn a little bit more about them, some of the challenges they face, and showcase a really unique and amazing ecosystem. So without further ado, thank you so much for joining us once again, and take us away.
Awesome. Thank you, Jesse. Hi, everybody. I'm really excited to be here this morning. It's 10 a.m. here in Alaska. So my name is Allyssa Morris. I am the environmental education specialist for actually 3 national wildlife refuges, but I'm based here in Fairbanks, Alaska. So we're located right in the interior of the state. And I am very excited. I really miss working with students in person. As you can see, I'm working from home virtually, but a lot of people ask me in the question and answer session, what's my favorite part of my job? And honestly, this is my favorite part of the job, is connecting with students from all over the country and in Canada and other countries, and just sharing our unique natural resources with the public. And so today we are going to talk about the lynx in the Yukon Flats National Wildlife Refuge. If you're not familiar with what a national wildlife refuge is, it's basically in the United States of America, we have over 560, I think we're at 568. I believe, different refuges, and they're all kind of created because of different species, whether it's wildlife or fish, or if it's a specific type of habitat. It's kind of set aside for those species to thrive. So they're not necessarily like gated areas. A lot of them are open, and you can actually access them to do a lot of recreational activities, like if you're into wildlife photography, or if you just want to go walk or hike through them. It's definitely excellent for wildlife viewing. The refuges up here in Alaska, there's really, really amazing recreational opportunities like floating rivers and kayaking and canoeing, and you have really unique wild experiences because the refuges up here in Alaska, there's not, your chances of running into another human is actually very, very small. You'll probably most likely see more wildlife than you will see other people. So I'm going to talk a little bit about these things in my presentation, but I just want to say thank you for joining today. Okay, so an overview of today's quick presentation is I'm going to talk a little bit about the Yukon Flats Refuge so you can become a little bit more familiar with it. We're going to talk about lynx. So you're going to learn everything that you would want to know about this animal, including its preferred diet, where you can see it like in terms of habitat, where it likes to live, and the different parts of the lynx, like on the body, the anatomy that helps it survive and adapt here in Alaska. And then we're going to dive into an actual lynx study that's happening throughout Alaska. And one of the study sites is happening inside the Yukon Flats Refuge. And then I'll open it up to questions at the very end. This picture was taken in the Yukon Flats Refuge, and it's of the aurora. So right now, this time of year, we are getting, I think right now we're only getting about 3.5 hours of daylight. Here in Fairbanks, the sun rises about 10:40 a.m. and it sets around 2:50 p.m. So we have very, very long days right now, and it can get rather difficult, but the aurora viewing at this time of year when we have clear skies is pretty phenomenal. So that's kind of an advantage of that. Okay, so like I mentioned, we have over 560 refuges in the United States of America. And Alaska, we only have 16. So 16 out of 560 isn't very much, but we do have some of the largest refuges in all of Alaska. So I did a presentation a couple of weeks back about Arctic National Wildlife Refuge. That's the refuge located in the top right corner of the state, and that's the largest of all the national refuges in the United States. Yukon Flats is what we're going to discuss today, and that's located just south of Arctic Refuge, and that is the third largest refuge. It's about 11 million acres in size. It's a really super special place because, I'm going to go on to my next slide. It's a lot of people call it a big duck factory because over 2 million nesting birds and waterfowl utilize the refuge. And that, I mean, there's a huge abundance of ponds and lakes. It's mostly wetlands. And so that is just like prime nesting habitat for waterfowl. And there's over 140 different bird species. There are 33 land mammals, and there's like 15 freshwater fish species and 3 species of salmon that utilize the refuge. So as you can see, this is flying over like the lowlands of the Yukon Flats Refuge. There's just a lot of these mini water ponds, and it's a big lake system and pond system, and they're all kind of like interconnected with each other, and it's just covered in the boreal forest. And the boreal forest is where I actually live in Fairbanks, Alaska, and that is the lynx's prime habitat. That's where you can find lynx, which we are going to talk about. So the Yukon Flats Refuge is a really super unique place, and you can find the Canada lynx. So the Canada lynx is the only native cat species in Alaska. We don't have mountain lions or bobcats. It's just the Canada lynx. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about the lynx itself. So I mentioned that you can find them in the boreal forest. They are very, very solitary and elusive and very shy animals. Like it's very, very difficult to see them because they are they like to kind of jet off if they feel any predators around them. They're not social at all. They like to be alone. They don't hunt in packs or anything. They kind of like stay with their small family groups. And then when they're ready to go off as an adult, they are solitary. Their home ranges are very small. They're usually like 10 to 20 miles in an area, but we have, because of the study that we're doing, we're actually learning a little bit more about the lynx, and that they tend to maybe travel a little further. So the reason I'm going to talk a little bit more about the study in a little bit, but there's so much about the lynx that we don't know and that we're continuing to learn in just the last couple of years, which is super exciting. But what we do know about the lynx is that up here in Alaska, they have like this grayish, whitish fur in the winter months. And in the summer months, they kind of, they shed some of that fur and it turns more into like a tan or light brown color. They are just like any other cat. They have whiskers on their face, and those are sensory tools. So say, for instance, their whiskers are kind of like as wide as their body. So if they were going into a very small tunnel or like a little rocky cave area, they can determine whether or not they'll be able to fit in that area by using their whiskers. They also use their whiskers if like there's a wind blowing, they can kind of turn their face towards that wind and determine which direction the wind is actually blowing to kind of use that as an advantage to see if they can smell some of their prey. And as you can see on the top of their head, they have little ear tufts. And so those little black pieces of hair sticking up on top of their ear is called a tuft. It's spelled T-U-F-T. And students, what I want you to do right now is I want you to take your hands and cuff it behind your ears. And I want you to listen to me talk. So basically, you should be able to hear me a little bit better by cupping your hands around the back of your ears. And you can put your hands down, thank you. And what that demonstrates is kind of sort of what the tuft helps the lynx with. And so it kind of absorbs sound. It kind of helps them hear a little bit better. And that's what enables them to be better hunters. And that's what allows them to hear their prey, maybe hopping through the snow. So those ear tufts kind of absorb the sound into their ears. And also when the lynx gets a little bit older, those black ear tufts tend to change in color. So just like humans, as we age, we might tend to get white or gray hair as we get older. It's the same as the lynx. Those little ear tufts may change and turn into like more of a gray or more of a white as they get older. Next slide. This is a picture of the lynx from the backside. So lynx aren't very large. They average about 15 to 40 pounds. So a 40-pound lynx would most likely be a male, because males tend to be a little bit larger than females. But they're just super fluffy animals, and they look bigger than they really are because they have really long legs. And so I love this shot because you can see how large their feet are. So they have these really huge paws that are anywhere from like 9 to 11 inches long. So that's, if you take a ruler, that would be like the size of their back paw. And this allows them, these big back paws kind of act like snowshoes. So if you were to walk on top of really, really thick, crusty snow, you would fall directly into it. But if you had snowshoes on your feet, that would allow you to walk on top of the snow a little bit better. And so these really, really thick paws help the lynx get through that really thick snow that we have up here in Alaska. So yeah, they have super thick fur, really big back feet, and then they have this short, tiny tail with a black tip on the back, and that's very indicative of a lynx. And they have really long legs that don't necessarily help them run faster. It actually helps them jump. So they are really good jumpers, and they will sometimes like jump up onto trees. And on those paws, they have really, really sharp claws, and those are actually retractable. So sometimes if you see lynx tracks, you won't usually see the actual claw mark in their track. Okay, and so this is what the lynx love to eat. So I love to eat spaghetti. So I could eat so much spaghetti. And the lynx, on the other hand, can eat so many snowshoe hares. So lynx populations are highly dependent on snowshoe hare populations. So biologists claim that if there weren't any snowshoe hares, lynx would most likely go extinct. So the snowshoe hare plays such an incredible role in our habitat. They're called a keystone species. What that means, keystone species, is basically they are a very important food species in the food web. So not only do lynx love to eat the snowshoe hare, but other animals up here love to eat them, like the fox, the red fox, coyotes love to eat them, wolves love to eat them. So snowshoe hares are very, very important. And yeah, the lynx are just very dependent on the snowshoe hare. And as the snowshoe hare populations rise, when there's lots of snowshoe hare populations, the lynx population rises, because that means that they have more food sources to eat. And when the snowshoe hare population decreases, the lynx population also follows, because they don't have that many snowshoe hares to eat. So they're not super healthy to have large litters, if that makes any sense. So these are all kind of questions and things that our biologists and researchers are currently studying, is determining the role that snowshoe hares really have with Canada lynx here in Alaska. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about this project that's happening across our state. So there's 8 study sites throughout Alaska, and one of the study sites is actually in the Yukon Flats Refuge. And that project is called the Northwest Boreal Forest Lynx Project. So teachers, if you wanted to dive more into this study, you're more than welcome to email me, or you can Google the Northwest Boreal Forest Lynx Project to read more about it. So I'm going to focus more on just this project in the Yukon Flats Refuges, and all these photos were taken in the Yukon Flats Refuge in 2019. So basically biologists are trying to find out, like I mentioned, there's just a lot that's unknown about lynx movement. They want to see kind of like the role of snowshoe hares with overall lynx population. They want to find out what kind of habitats, like we know they like living in the boreal forest, but what they're just trying to figure out, like potential threats to maintaining movement corridors of how lynx move. So they have different live traps set out throughout the refuge. And our biologists that are based here in Fairbanks, they fly out via aircraft to the Yukon Flats Refuge. They stay in small, remote, dry cabins. So these are log cabins. When I mean dry, that means that there's no running water. It's heated by a wood stove, and it's just a very small cabin, and they travel via snow machine or snowmobile. We call them snow machines up here in Alaska. And they travel from site to site, checking these live traps, which I'll show you a picture of them. So the conditions or the weather can be anywhere. They go out from mid-February to early April, and it can be anywhere from the positive degrees. And I think they've been out there to where it was negative 50 degrees Fahrenheit. So super, super cold. So they need to be prepared with not only just like warm weather gear, but also safety gear to make sure that they are prepared for any conditions that they might face. So they travel from trap to trap. And this is a picture of what a live trap is. So it's basically made by our biologists. All of the materials were bought at our local hardware store. So this is just basically like plastic PVC piping wrapped in chicken wire. And we will ask, like our staff or our friends to save duck carcasses, and we'll use that as bait. Sometimes they might even drop a couple scents of, different other animal scents inside the trap to really lure the lynx in. But once the lynx goes into the actual trap and they step on that wooden platform in the top left corner, the door closes behind them, and then there's a sensor that goes off, and that sensor, the biologist can determine which trap has actually been closed and where there might actually be an animal. So they'll leave their cabin, hop on their snow machine, and go out to that exact trap because they know the location using GPS coordinates. And then they will immobilize the lynx. So that means that they will give them like a shot or an injection, and that will sedate the lynx. And so these lynx are not harmed. Our biologists have received lots of training to do this properly through different certifications and different veterinarians. And our number one priority is to make sure that, of course, the lynx itself is safe. And so once they sedate the animal using the shot, they will wait until the animal kind of sleeps, and they have about 1 to 2 hours to collect different information and to place a collar on them. So this next slide shows the sedating, monitoring, and measuring. And so this is like that 1 to 2 hour time frame where the animal is asleep and lots of information is recorded. So this on the top left is a data sheet, and this is kind of the data that the biologist will input. So they're taking the weight, they're taking the body length, they're taking the heart rate, they're collecting whiskers from the actual lynx, and this can be used to collect DNA information. The top right corner is their front paw. So as you can see, it covers the entire size of a human hand. It's very, very big. The bottom left picture is our biologist measuring the lynx's tooth. And so this is a way to determine the lynx's age is by measuring their teeth. So this is to see like how old the actual lynx is. And then the bottom right, this is Mark Bertram. He's our lead biologist at Yukon Flats Refuge. And he's kind of taking the lead on this project. And you can see like all of his tools that he has set out right in front of him. And this is the collar. This is the collar that's placed on each lynx that we capture. And this collar gives biologists so much helpful information in terms of their movement. So every 4 hours, this collar records the actual location of the lynx. And these collars provide information for about 2 to 3 years. That's how long that battery actually lasts. So the collar is properly fitted on the lynx. And it has a specific number associated with it. So this lynx that was trapped is Lynx. Its name is basically Lynx 730. And this lynx will have this collar on for about 2 to 3 years. And then once the battery is no longer working, the collar falls off the animal. And then the biologist will go out and collect those collars because they can be reused. So it's really, really amazing technology because every 4 hours, information is collected in terms of where the lynx is located. And it can also collect information like its heart rate, I believe. And that's all sent to our biologist's computer. So it's all via satellite. So our biologists can basically just log on to their computers and look up lynx number 730 and find out where exactly they are. So this is a map that shows from March 2018 to May 2020. It shows the movements of 18 collared lynx inside of the Yukon Flats Refuge. Every color is a different lynx. And so these were all 18 lynx that were collared within the refuge. And as you can see, the pod, kind of like the stack of circles right in the middle of the refuge, they, like I mentioned, they all kind of are hanging out sort of very close to one another because they were collared in sort of the same general area. But as you can see, some of the lynx have traveled way far, like this one in the light blue has traveled east into Canada towards the Mackenzie River. And that's a super long distance. So, and then this green one that's traveled way down to the Yukon. We're just trying to figure out like, why are these animals doing this and exactly what is, what's the driving force behind these like sporadic movements. So if you want to find out more information about this project, you can visit the Instagram page, which has amazing photos. It's instagram.com, the Lynx Project. Like I said, it's Yukon Flats is one of 8 study sites that's happening. This is a picture of a lynx that, so after all the collars placed on the animal and all the data is collected, they place the animal back into the trap. And they kind of wait for the lynx to sort of safely wake up. And when the lynx is fully awake, they open up the trap door and they re-release the animal back into the wild. And this is a photo of the lynx running back into the wild. And I'm ending the presentation with adorable little Lynx Kittens. So lynx will have anywhere up here in Alaska, anywhere from 2 to 6, sometimes even 8 kittens per litter. And when they're born, they have these like bright blue eyes that eventually change color, but they are super adorable. And yeah, I would love to hear any questions that you might have, and I'll try my best to answer them.
Well, Allyssa, that was awesome. Thank you so much. We have so many interested kids and so many questions pouring in on YouTube. So there's at least 7 whole groups or whole classrooms from across Ontario on YouTube, plus 6 live with us. So it's an Ontario day today. Over 250 kids, which is really, really exciting. So thank you guys all for being here. We really appreciate it. So we're going to dive in. My computer's held out so far. So I'm going to start with Mr. Elsa's class. So Mr. Elsa's joining us in Burlington, Ontario. I'm heading to Burlington later today. Mr. Elsa, you want to come on in? Go for it.
Hello. About how many lynxes are in each litter of like a family of lynxes?
Yeah, that's a great question. So here in Alaska, because the food sources, and it was a very, very high snowshoe harrier. So like I mentioned, when there's lots of snowshoe hares, the lynx populations will greatly increase. Our litter populations are anywhere from 2 to 8. And so on average, it's about 4 to 5 per litter, which that isn't usually very common in other places where lynx are found. And we assume it's because of our rich food sources up here.
Yeah.
Good question. Thank you.
Yeah, cool first question, guys. All right, let's go to Mr. Sega's class. Joining us in the delightfully named Smooth Rock Falls, Ontario. Come on up if you've got a question. Go. Sprint up for the question. That's the best way to do it. Great.
Okay, we have tons of questions. Here's one. What are their predators?
Yeah, does anything eat lynx?
That's a great question. So the wolf is a predator, and also coyotes are a predator to the lynx, and also people. So people are predators as well up here because in Alaska and other places, they trap the lynx and they use the lynx to make different clothing because the lynx fur is like super soft. And actually, I forgot to show everybody. I have a lynx fur that I just wanted to show you all. I wish you could all touch and feel it, but as you can see, I just wanted to show you the back legs because the back legs are so long, so you can kind of see just how long they are.
Yeah.
And then here are the little ear tufts. So yeah, people will trap these animals and they'll use them to make ruffs for jackets and for coats. And they also will eat the meat as well. So great question. Predators are coyotes, wolves, and people.
Yeah. Awesome, guys. All right, let's head to Sudbury. I swear we've had every school in Sudbury in over the last few weeks, which has been great. So Miss Lewis's class at Alexander Public School, if you want to just demute your mic, come on in and go for it.
Hi. So my class wants to know about how long do they live for?
Yeah.
Great question. So they are, on average, their age length is anywhere from 5 to 10 years.
Awesome, guys. We're whipping through these. This is great. Miss Short's class joining us in Sarnia. If you guys have a question for us, come on up.
We do. Just one sec.
Take your time.
We actually have 2 questions. So, okay, Aiden, come on up. Right there.
How is researching animals such as the lynx important to humans?
Yeah, so that's a really great question. Up here in Alaska, because a lot of people trap these animals, this information is really important for rules and regulations. We want to make sure that the rules and regulations that the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and that the Alaska Department of Fish and Game are actually being fair to the actual wildlife species itself. And also, we're our conservation agency, so our main mission is to ensure that the populations of these animals are healthy for current generations and also for future generations, because we want to make sure that people like you all, students, when you grow older and if you choose to have children, we want to make sure that your children and even your children's children can appreciate and can value these wildlife animals, because it's pretty amazing that we have such rich and diverse species.
It's something we covered earlier today too. I think certainly when I was a kid, I grew up thinking about like the Brazilian rainforest in East Africa as these amazing centers of wildlife and wilderness. And Canada and the US have almost more than any other country in the world. I mean, we have so much between us with all sorts of amazing ecosystems. So it's nice to be able to appreciate that and to highlight some really cool animals today. So thank you so much again. Ms. Rooney's class, you're joining us in Simcoe County. If you guys want to come up, just demute your mic and you're good to go. We'll come into the Fantastic Fives in just a second. So Ms. Rooney's, go for it.
How many different types of lynx are there?
Yeah.
Great question. So there are 4 different types. There's the Eurasian lynx, there's Iberian lynx, the Canada lynx, which we just talked about, and there's a 4th one, which I can't think about off the top of my head. I'm sorry. Yeah, the Canada lynx is the only lynx that's found in Alaska.
Okay. We'll try and find out the 4th one by the end of the broadcast too. I'll look that up while we're answering some more questions. All right, Miss Delpino's class, come on in Thunder Bay. Thunder Bay?
For us?
Yeah, you're good. You're good to go.
Oh, perfect. Alyssa, do you want to come up? Sorry, Boy. Oh, okay. Who wants to ask Kate Ben come up? Sorry. We had one. Now she's a little shy.
No worries. All good. No worries.
Okay.
Kate Ben.
Discovered.
How were lynx discovered?
When were they discovered?
When were they discovered? Yeah.
When were they discovered? Wow, that is a really excellent question. I'm going to have to look that up because they've been around for quite a long time. I can't quite tell you the exact year, but they have been around for quite a long time.
Well, one thing that's worth noting too, and I always like to highlight this for students in Canada and the US, I mean, we might have scientifically described them in the last few hundred years, but people have been living in North America for many, many thousands of years. So when people came over from Asia originally on the land bridge through to Alaska, actually, they would have run into lynx. So for the entire time humans have inhabited North America, they would have known about lynx. It's a fairly large animal and not one that's easy to miss once you know what you're looking for. So cool question, guys. All right, I'm going to take a few from YouTube right now. Again, tons of groups joining in. In fact, there's so many questions, it's hard to even find where they are. Mr. Hancock's class in Georgetown, they want to know, what can students do to help the lynx down here in Ontario? So either the kids in Ontario helping your lynx in Alaska or just in general helping lynx. What can our kids do?
That's a great question. So I think just so we know that the Canada lynx, they prefer the boreal forest. And I think that, there's a lot of development that's happening, and a lot of our resources are quickly disappearing, and that greatly affects this wildlife species. So I think just students being aware of just kind of like their surroundings and just continuing to learn about not only the lynx, but also about other wildlife species. I mean, they're wild animals, and our backyards and these lands that we are living on, years and thousands of years, they have been inhabited by these wildlife species. And so they were kind of like the original inhabitants of these places. So I think just having a greater sense of our human impacts, just being aware of that, I think that plays a huge role.
Yeah, just simply by being here, guys, the amount that you're learning today and the fact that you're so interested is fantastic. It's a great start. There's so much more to follow up with too, and I will share some links throughout the broadcast as well so you guys can keep the learning going. All right, Mr. Shattuck's class joining us in Chalk River. They were just with us the last hour too, so they're just spending the whole afternoon with us, really. Connor wants to know, what are the chances of seeing a lynx in the wild?
Wow, great question. The lynx, seeing one in the wild up here in Alaska is not, it's not very common, but it does happen. I've only seen one, and I've lived in Alaska for 11 years. But they, like my neighbors, they're like, did you see that lynx the other day? I'm like, no, I've never seen the lynx. So it's not super common, but if you just keep your eyes open, you might actually see one, because other people have definitely seen them. They're not quite as common as maybe like a moose, because we see moose pretty regularly. But they're very elusive animals, and they're so smart that way.
Yeah. Well, what we're going to do is next time we do a presentation on lynx, we're going to have one with your neighbor instead of you. We covered all the bases. One more quick question on YouTube, and then we'll go back to Mr. Elsa's class and go through the whole round again. So Miss Dykstra's class wants to know, does the male look different than the female?
Great question. So the only really way that you can differentiate the male from the female is their size. And really, it's if you have them next to each other is how you can really compare. Their colorations are very similar. It's just basically their size, and the male is just maybe like 5 to 10 pounds heavier than the female. So they'll be a little bit bigger and a little bit taller.
Very cool. Let's go back to our live groups and welcome into even more classes on YouTube. I think we have 9 full classes now, which is crazy. So there's one in BC as well. So we're getting a little bit closer to you up there in Alaska. Mr. Elsa's class, come on in. Go for it for a second.
I have 2 questions. So
go for it.
If a lynx finds a snowshoe hare, would it bring it back to its family, or would it eat it right away?
Yeah.
That's a great question. So they would most likely bring it back to its family, and sometimes they'll cache it away, but most of the time, they're just such great hunters, and it depends. If there's a lot of food out there, they will they'll cache it away and they'll bring it back, and they'll maybe hide it for a little bit. But for the most part, they'll eat it right there.
Okay.
What's your second, if you want to ask it?
Would a lynx ever attack a human?
That's a great question. So I think if a lynx ever felt very threatened by a human, they would. I think any wild animal, if they felt threatened, they would fend for themselves and they would attack them. Do lynx hunt humans? No, they don't want to do anything with us. They're actually scared of us. But I think, if you think about especially a lynx with like a litter nearby, if it's a mama lynx, all she wants to do is protect her kittens. It's just like a bear, basically. Like you hear like a mama bear. She just wants to protect her cubs. And I think if a human is nearby and they feel threatened, they will act out and they will try to protect themselves. But they are not out to hunt humans. No.
Good question, guys. All right, Mr. Shiga's class, come on back up. Go for it.
Okay. How many Canadian lynx are there, and what else do they eat besides hares?
Ooh.
Great question. So that the population is something we're trying to figure out because we actually don't know the population of Canada lynx in Alaska, and that's why there's all these different study sites. And so the population is something that this research study will help us determine. Other food sources, they love to eat like ground squirrels. They'll also eat like small mammals like voles and different rodents. They'll also, if they have the opportunity, they'll eat different weasels. So they might eat like an ermine or a marten. And they'll also eat like small birds like ptarmigan or other birds.
Awesome question, guys. I want to go back really quickly to the question on the types of lynx. So if you look it up really quick, we've got so Canadian lynx, the Iberian lynx, Eurasian lynx, and the bobcat, which I did not know was in the lynx group. So that's very interesting. So yeah, there's our four. So we've got sort of Spanish and sort of Portuguese, Eurasian in general, and we've got Canadian and American, and then a slightly smaller guy, just for good measure.
Thank you, Jesse.
My pleasure, yeah. Let's go back to Alexander Public School. If you guys have another question, come on up. Go for it.
So they were wondering, if I can read my list, are they considered endangered or not?
No, they are not endangered. They're not on the endangered list or on the threatened list, which is a good thing. And so their populations are healthy at this time.
Fantastic. Amidst our conservation month, where that was not the case for a lot of animals, that's really good to hear. So thank you for that. Whew, some positivity in conservation. Thalia is 8. She's been asking all sorts of questions on YouTube the whole time. So I want to share a quick one from her. How old are lynx when they leave their family?
They are about 2 years old when they leave their family. Yeah, so they stick around for a little bit and they learn from the mom. The father isn't super involved. He actually tends to kind of like leave the mom and the kittens for a little bit, and sometimes he'll come back. But yeah, the kittens will learn from their mama a little bit, learning how to hunt, and then they'll leave when they're about 1.5, 2 years old.
Awesome. All right, I'm going to take a couple more quick ones from YouTube that are super fast, and then we'll do our last 3 live classes in a row. Miss McLeod's class wants to know, can they swim?
Yes, they can swim. Yep, it's not very common, but they can swim. There have been pictures of lynx, they're like, what is that animal in the river? And it's a lynx. And yeah, they're able to swim.
Okay. And then Cameron in Mr. Parker's class wants to know how fast it takes them to hunt and take down their prey. A full hunt. What's going on?
Yeah, they are super fast. I mean, they can go like, I think 30 to 40 miles per hour. They are just really, really, really great hunters, and they are fast, and they will completely jump on their prey, and they'll use their really sharp claws to get to their prey.
Super cool. All right, Miss Short's class, come on back in. Hey.
Okay.
Hey.
Is it illegal to hunt lynx?
Yeah.
In the state of Alaska, as long as you have a trapping license and you follow the rules and regulations, that means that there's certain areas where you can and can't trap. It is legal, but you do have to follow definitely the different rules and regulations that change every year. And you also have to make sure that you have a proper permit to do so.
Yeah, so that's a nice follow-up question, actually. Like, is it a tag system where there's like a certain amount of them that are allowed to be taken from the wild every year, or how does it work up there?
Yeah, and that's exactly why this study is happening, because we want to make sure that we're trying to figure out their populations and making sure that rules and regulations are actually appropriate for the populations that we have. And so, there's different rules if you're a native Alaskan, and so there's different like subsistence rules and laws that you can follow. And then if you're like a resident of the state of Alaska, that they're also different.
Yeah. I love that we got a chance to highlight this, actually, because I think certainly when I was growing up, when I thought of hunting, I was just, appalled at the whole concept. And well-regulated hunting is actually one of the most important conservation measures in the world. There's no people that are more keen to preserve an ecosystem or animals than hunters, anglers, fishers. And so that's a really integral element to a lot of conservation areas in Canada, the US, and around the world. So I'm really glad we got that question. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, great question.
Right. Yeah. Ms. Rooney's class, come on up, and then we'll go back to the Fantastic Fives and wrap up from there. This has been great, everyone. Ms. Rooney, go for it.
How many cubs can they have up to?
I'm sorry, I didn't quite hear the question.
How many cubs or how many babies can they have at a time?
Oh, how many kittens? So they're called kittens.
Yep.
And they can have anywhere from 2 to 8 per litter. Mm-hmm.
That is a very wide range. I think these ones are a little, Fantastic Fives, Miss Delpino's class. Come on back up and go for it.
Hi. Sorry, we had a question about illnesses. So what happens, I guess, if a lynx gets sick or ill? Do you step in to help, or is it more of a natural process?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we get asked that question often, and we just want to remind people that these animals are wild animals, and we kind of just let nature do its own thing. So we don't work like with a zoo or anything. If there are injured animals, sometimes we might work with zoos in the lower 48 states. But for the most part, we kind of just let nature do its course.
Allyssa, this has been so much fun. We took way more questions than we usually do, so thank you so much for being so quick and whipping through them. I just want to note for our teachers at home too, if you want to check out more, again, Instagram.com/Lynx Project for some really amazing imagery, so check that out when you're done. And then if you want to learn more about Yukon Flats National Wildlife Refuge, the sort of Federal Wildlife Service page for it is right here, so check that out. I can also share these links with any teachers who are interested if you send me an email. Allyssa, before we wrap up, is there any last message you want to share with our students today about lynx or how they can get involved or what they can do from home?
No, I think just you being on this presentation is wonderful. I hope that you learn new things about the only native cat that we have here in Alaska and about the Yukon Flats Refuge. And thank you. I'm just really happy to have you all join me today. And I hope everyone has a great Thursday.
Thank you so much, guys. I'm going to bring in all our classes. You know this from our first presentation. So Mr. Els, Ms. Rasiga, Ms. Lewis, Ms. Short, Ms. Bruni, and join me.
Say thank you.